We have two new integrations with Netlify that I'm really excited about. The first is about accessing data serverlessly via a Netlify site, and the other is around authentication and shared JWT secrets being set up very, very easily. So to show you what that looks like, I already have a OneGraph app here, and what I'm going to do is associate it with one of my Netlify sites. You can see I get a nice list here, and I'm going to associate it with my personal site. You can see here I get a little preview in line. And I can start tracking the Netlify deploys. And what this is going to do is every time a branch is deployed or a new custom domain is added, that's going to automatically get added to the list of cores so that OneGraph can securely enforce access rights to your OneGraph app from those serverless pages. The next step is a shared secret. So this is where I would copy the secret from Netlify, paste it in here, and now OneGraph is going to actually generate JWT tokens based off of our authentication mechanisms that Netlify can understand. So I'll just type that in here, and now it should be set. And then lastly, whenever OneGraph is actually generating a JWT we can actually send the results of that before we sign it to a webhook for processing. And what this is going to do is actually list all of the functions that this current site I have selected, which is my personal site, has available. So there's a function called sign in. And once I have that, it's going to say, all right, here's the URL we're going to use to actually process the webhook before we sign it. So I go ahead and set that. And now we should be good to go. So we're associated, our cores are automatically going to be set, and we're going to be able to start generating some really cool JWT tokens automatically. And the way that's done here is every time a user signs in using the OneGraph library, we actually run a associated pre-flight query. And so this would look like, for example, let's say Salesforce user ID. So this is saying every time a user signs in, no matter what the service is, I want you to run this query. Go into Salesforce, go into GitHub, get their ID, get the list of organizations they're a part of, and get the name of those organizations. And this is enough for me to figure out who the user is and what kind of role they should be assigned. I'm going to go ahead and set that. And now whenever I come in here and we start querying around, so let's go ahead and see what a login on the site would look like. So I'll log in with GitHub. Once I do that, you can see over here, we had this nice pre-flight query sent to us. So it looks like it's a valid JWT token already. However, inside of this custom claim, we put the results of the pre-flight query. So you can see that this user was not signed into Salesforce. That's okay. Inside of the data, that will come back as null. So this tells me this user is not signed in currently with Salesforce. But they are signed in with GitHub, and I can get their GitHub user ID and also a list of nodes, a list of organizations and the names of them. And because OneGraph is making this call to GitHub on behalf of the user and then signing it with a shared secret, you can trust that these are legitimate organizations that the user is actually part of. And then we wrote this simple little function that goes through and just checks to see if the GitHub organizations includes one called OneGraph. And if so, we'll go ahead and make the user an admin, and we'll assign them to a user ID of their GitHub ID. So you can see that the token that we finally respond with is very, very tiny, but is very sophisticated. In this case, because OneGraph is part of, or I am part of the OneGraph organization, it'll let me be an admin, and it gives me my user ID. So you can see how we can add authentication and authorization based off of MailChimp, Netlify, QuickBooks, whatever the service is. It's really, really easy to reach in and generate that. And finally, let me show you actually how this Netlify integration was done. So you can see here that I have a list of sites, and I get a nice preview and deploy hooks and whatnot for them. This is actually built on top of OneGraph. So the way that works is I'm going to go into Netlify. Let's call this Netlify sites. And I'm going to get a list of my sites, and maybe I want to be able to filter them. So I'm going to make that a parameter. And for each of them, I want to know the build URL, maybe the account name, when it was created, the custom domain it's on. Let's see whether or not it's the DNS is managed. And let's get for the published deploy, let's get a list of the available functions here. And yeah, let's see if the site has some of the stuff and the screenshot URL. And this should kind of give us enough. We could obviously get much more detail out of here if we wanted to. But if we run this, it'll tell us we're missing a name. But we can say, for example, docs. And then there we go. This is giving me information on our docs site, or maybe my Rise OS, which is my personal site that we were just looking at. So you can see I can really, really easily pull out the information from the Netlify API to build integrations like the one we see right here. And so it's this kind of nice Ouroboros where it's built on top of itself and just kind of improves and gets better and better.